Still doing his thing. We are live. Good afternoon. Tom Ginn and
Mark Gassert, Peachtree
Elevate
Corner,
Your...
Georgia. I got to get that in. Peachtree place the planet, man.
Well, I'm going to give you a mouthful. Try to say this one. Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. There we go.
Oh,
there.
man.
I did you there, buddy. It's where The Wizard of Oz was featured. The
Yes.
movie. We have a big festival here. They close down Main Street and put up a big video screen, and people bring their lawn chairs and watch The Wizard of Oz. So this is where The Wizard of Oz was featured. It was Oconomowoc, Wisconsin.
That's a
So
beautiful
it has a historical ring to it. It's known as the Hampton of the Midwest. This is where the rich and the famous Chicago and St. Louis vacation is. About 15 lakes in about an 8-mile radius with unbelievable mansions. It's unbelievable. The Paps are here. The Montgomery Wards are here. Those type of industrialists have their summer homes up here in Oconomowoc area. So, but anyway, that's enough of Oconomowoc. So, but and Mark, I'll just start out a little bit about what Elevate Your Profits all about.
Please do.
And then you'll be introducing our guest here in a moment. So I'm excited to have our guest on again, sharing a powerful message about his book and some other things that are upcoming. So with that all said, Elevate Your Profits. How long have we been doing this, Mark? 2.5 years, almost 3 years now?
Correct.
We've interviewed some very significant.
Tolerated me for that long, and that is amazing, let me tell you.
So, but anyway, it's easy to tolerate you, Mark, I guarantee it. So no conflicts here. So, but Elevate Your Profits, we established this program. I've been a serial entrepreneur since 1983, started my career in business in the financial service sector, created my own financial agency, and I'm all about helping people better understand the power of being a business for yourself. So this platform was established to help those that maybe having desire to go into business. And I believe if you're in sales, you're in business for yourself. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And and those that are already in business, we bring on guests like Larry to help impart their wisdom, to help people better understand what it takes to be successful in business. And part of that success is knowing how to market yourself and how to sell, how to close the opportunity that you're seeking. So that's the purpose of Elevate Your Profit. So Mark, anything you'd like to say before we get going?
Well, yeah, about our guest, and I'll keep it real succinct and to the point. I mean, for years, Larry has been killing it out there in the copier industry. And I'm just going to share a couple little statements. Larry always says, my promise of value. There's no BS, no fluff, and it's all heart. And all this is delivered through the lens of a true practitioner. He always talks about being real, relevant, and reliable. He said that matters. And his famous saying, I really love this one, and remember, soft skills will yield you hard dollars. And with that, reading his book, and I'll hold it up. I'm reading it again. I'm studying this thing.
Hey,
We
thanks,
each got
guys.
a copy of it. So thank you, Larry. And I will let you talk a little bit about your book and what you're doing. But some of the things that I like, your little credo, your sayings like, we make a difference. We have a new class of genuine, authentic sales professionals. And I think that's something you promote, you and Daryl. I catch some of the YouTubes. If not, I've got you on my iPhone here and check you out. It's kind of soothing to listen to you guys because, and the reason I say that, I've been in sales a few years, so I've gotten kicked to the curb and, I've had to deal with rejection like we all do. But you really have elevated things and a different perspective for me on having conversations with people instead of just, trying to solve something before you even engage with somebody or talk to them about, if it leads that way to their family, their profession, their health. It's kind of unique. And I have made some friends along the way. Maybe they're not buying right now, but I think that's important that you're an ear for them, a resource, so to speak. And that's something that both you and Daryl do a great job at. So I appreciate you. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, this is the man himself, Larry Levine, selling from the heart.
No, I appreciate it, guys, and it's always an honor to come back and hang out with Mr. Ginn and Mark Gasser. But I wanted before we get started, there's a word I wanted to key in on that you said, and just it's one word, and that's conversations. And regardless of what stage you are in your career, whether you're just starting out, you're at the midway point, or you might be, on the tail end of a very successful career, is when I travel around and I ask people, what's the hardest part of sales? What are you challenged with the most? And, each one has their own challenges, but what really points back, and all roads point back, to conversations. And I bring this up because if you can't open up a conversation with somebody, it's going to be very difficult to sell anything. Now, here's where I'm going to kind of take a hard right turn on this. And this is hard for salespeople to swallow, or sales managers, or even sales leaders, is these conversations in the very beginning, they may not be sales centric conversations. But we have to know how to delicately weave between those types of conversations, a business conversation and a sales conversation. And to me, in my opinion, in my belief, there's not enough emphasis in sales today in how we open up conversations, how we guide conversations, how we facilitate conversations, and quite frankly, let the conversation go where the conversation goes. Now, some people are going to go, Larry, you are absolutely crazy. Let the conversation go where the conversation goes. However, if you hold yourself accountable and you make a commitment to starting many conversations throughout a given day, if you look at this over the course of a few weeks and over a course of months, you're starting conversations, and you're in conversations now at various stages. And all I ask for people to think about is the way you open a conversation determines what happens next. Pause and think about that one for a second. And we just don't coach and train people on how to effectively open conversations. But I do know this, that very first conversation and that very first impression leaves a lasting mark. And it's up to you what you do about it in the first couple of minutes.
Well, before we went live, I mentioned something I wanted to bring up. I think that's perfect to bring it up right now, is establishing a conversation. What's your thought on having appropriate questions to guide the conversation? What's your advice on questions?
Yeah, questions are everything, but I'd say intentional questions and questions that get somebody to think. And just follow along with me on this one, is I'm a big proponent of this. There's surface level questions and there's below the surface level questions. And if people aren't familiar with those terms, I'll just throw it to you guys in another way. There's sets of vanilla questions. I call these the canned questions that everybody shouts out there that get you the same vanilla responses. And if we keep things at a surface level with key decision makers, influencers, business owner, presidents of companies, insert whatever titles that you're having these conversations with, y'all are going to get the same responses. But I believe this is the great way to open up a conversation is based on what we at Selling from the Heart call insight questions. And insightful questions, when you open up these conversations, lead to some monumentally great conversations. In other words, it could be something like this. If I'm having a conversation with Mark, and I can say,
Right.
Mark, before we start off our time together today, and by the way, thank you, right? I'm super grateful for our time together. I was reading in last week's Chief Financial Officer Journal. And in it, there was a great article that shared how CFOs are looking for ... Hey, Mark, as we kick off our time together today, what's your thoughts on this? I'm just curious. And or you could say something, and these are powerful because it's the first couple questions. I'm a big believer in, if you get to business right up front, and it leads to so many other things that can happen on the backside. It's a complete different philosophy as far as most people, especially in highly relational industries and highly relational channels, they want to build rapport and all that. Totally understand that. But we got to think about, you've asked somebody for their precious time. You didn't ask for their precious time to spend 10 or 15 minutes rapport building. You ask for their time to engage in a conversation with them because you're going to bring some ideas and some insights. It could be in working with, right? Hey, Mark, in working with
Right.
presidents and business owners of companies just like yours, over the last 90 days, we've been helping them with ideas to improve client retention. We've been helping them with ways to grow new business. And we've been helping them with ways to decrease client attrition. Hey, out of those three, Mark, I'm just curious, which one hits the mark with you? If you had to pick one of the three, which one hits home? And then you all just got to stop. You just got to stop and just, Mark's going to answer.
Right.
And then you can play off of that. Hey, and Mark could say something to the effect of, you know what? I've been really thinking over the last 60 days about decreasing client attrition. And then I would just come back and say, well, what aspects of client attrition are you thinking about? Walk me through this. What's happened over the last 60 to 90 days that's got you thinking about decreasing client attrition? You see where I'm going with this?
Yes.
Mhm.
And to me, the way you open these conversations is bring some insight. Bring some insight into the conversation, that you're having conversations with people just like them. You're reading things that they're reading. You're listening to things that they're listening to. And if you ever want to get equal business stature, or if you ever want to sit on the right side of the table with somebody, start asking these questions in the first couple minutes of that conversation. But it's how you set it up. You can just set it up with being thankful and being grateful. It's all a part of selling from the heart. I'm super grateful for our time together this afternoon. I'm super grateful for our time together this morning. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You know, Larry, you just said something there that I don't hear a lot of myself. Mark, you probably being more in the direct selling side, you know, making the phone call, asking for people's time and stuff. But I never hear a lot of people saying, I'm really grateful that we're able to spend a few minutes together here today. Hopefully our time will be valuable for you. So I don't hear a lot of that. And I think that's so important, what you just said.
Yeah, you know, and it's, thank you. And it's unfortunate because let's just think about where trust, there's two things that salespeople and sales leaders, sales managers can really, really improve upon. And that's where we build trust and where we build credibility. And here's what's interesting, because and this may not play out for everybody, but let's just stop and think about why this is so important. Is I think salespeople, because in the back of their head, salespeople know how they're perceived in the marketplace. Would you all agree?
Yes.
We know where perception sits in the marketplace today, especially through the lens of a buyer. But more importantly, an astute salesperson knows there's a negative connotation with salespeople. So the words like and friend start to rise to the surface fairly quickly. I want to do whatever I can to be liked, and I want to do whatever I can to become friends with somebody, build a relationship and all this. But here's what I want us to think about, and how you open this and why is so important, because what I'm about ready to say is an either or. So for everyone who's watching or listening, here's the question. You can either be liked, or you could be friends, or you could be viewed as being somebody who's credible and trustworthy. Which one would you prefer? You can't have both. It's either one or the other. And the reason why I say this is it's hard to like somebody and become friends with somebody if you don't trust them and you don't think they're credible. That's why it's so important. The way you open these conversations and set the tone sets up what happens next. And there's nothing wrong with looking a senior executive, a president, a business owner in the eye and saying, Mark, before we get started this morning, I just want to let you know I'm super grateful for our time together. This means a lot. Thank you for investing the next 20 minutes in our conversation. If I'm telling you this, if more people did that, you're going to get key decision makers, influencers, presidents, business owners. If they're sitting down, they are now sitting up straight and they are leaning in, because I will tell you this, it's rare that anyone starts off a conversation like that.
Right.
Yeah, it goes against what I've been in sales since 1983. So I've seen all the different hacks that they would recommend use, but this is probably the most important thing that we're talking about right now is what you just mentioned there, is being grateful, letting people know that you value them and this conversation is about them. And I just want to let people know that they're watching out there. We got Randy Chafee's in the house, Robert Brooker, tag and share this out. You guys are all in sales and marketing yourself, so share this out with your colleagues. This is going to be a very insightful, fruitful experience for anybody that listens to this. So just want to acknowledge those that are here in the house today. If you have any questions, please post them. Mark will put them up, and Larry will get them answered for you.
Hey, Randy just said to me, love this Larry Levine. So there you go.
Oh,
man.
thank you. I appreciate it.
Right.
It's, you know, I tell you what, I'm at a loss for words sometimes, and I'll share with you why. Is, you know, I firmly believe that in life things happen for a reason, and I never would have thought, right? So here we are, you know, we're knocking on the end of August, you know, as we spend some time together this afternoon or this evening, depending on what time zone y'all are in. It's still afternoon for me. Is, you know, I look back on this, and if we would have had this conversation 7, 8, 9 years ago, and you would have asked me, hey, can you fast forward 8 or 9 years, and now it's towards the tail end of summer 2023, would you imagine having a podcast called Selling from the Heart? Would you imagine having a book that turned into a movement around authenticity, integrity, and trust in the sales world? And I'd say y'all are nuts, right? Mm-hmm. However, and it's a big capital however, is I believe, and this is just my belief, is the business world is sick and tired of being sick and tired. And here I am, just someone who firmly believes that authenticity's a winner. You got to learn how to build trust and credibility. And the only way you do that is by bringing your genuine, authentic self to the forefront, which is the subtitle of Selling from the Heart. I had no idea when I wrote this book if this message would even resonate, let alone how many books would sell. And it wasn't the purpose behind how many books I'd sell. Is I just wanted to get this message out there in a way that would get people to stop and think. Yeah. And that's what Selling from the Heart, I firmly believe, does, is it gets somebody to stop and think about who they are, their beliefs, their values. They self-reflect upon it, and then they do what's right. And I think in sales, we know what's right. But a lot of this heart and sincerity and being true to yourself it's counterculture. It goes against the grain of how many of us were brought up in sales. And now it's just, you know, if we fast forward to what's happened over the last 2-3 years, people just want somebody who's real, who's relatable, who's relevant, who brings the goods and gives it to them straight and walks with integrity. In other words, they do the right things because it's the right thing to do. And that's what Selling from the Heart's all about.
You mentioned something there, you know, is the whole thing you were talking about is us understanding our human needs. And that's Maslow. And somewhat of Maslow's principles in our communication with people, whether it be business and relationships. It really comes down, do you see me? Do you hear me? And do you care? if you can demonstrate that in all elements of your conversation, and that's what the questions you ask, how you respond to their questions is so important. So that's human nature. That's what we're seeking. That's where you build trust. Do you see me? Do you hear? And how can you demonstrate that you care about me? Because that's ultimately what we're trying to do is crack that code of relationship to build the trust. And that's Maslow. That's a principle of human nature. If we study those things and apply them, be conscious in all our conversations, we can take things to a much higher level than we anticipated in there. So studying human nature is, I think, is a personally study yourself. What are the things that trigger you? How do you respond to questions? And understand people are going to respond, have the same thoughts and ideas that you have. So put yourself in there.
I totally agree. And it's so interesting. I'm just a massive big believer in this saying, because it's playing out now like ever before, is what's forever old is forever new.
Yeah.
What's forever old is forever new. If you go back to Maslow, even go past that, right? All the greats of our times over the last couple hundred years, if you look at this, they all brought to the surface then, bring it to the surface now. It's all people development skills and it's all relational development skills. Two core things that in my travels I see people sorely lacking. It's hard to be successful, monumentally successful, quarter over quarter, month over month, year over year on a consistent basis if you struggle in how you develop your people skills and how you develop your relational skills. And it all starts inward. And I just happened to learn this the hard way. I wish I would have learned all this stuff in my 20s.
Yeah.
I just didn't learn it till later on in life. Right. But it's why one of my favorite sayings is to know thyself is to value thyself. We got to really spend time and unpack who we are. And if we can truly connect to ourselves, and the way we connect to ourselves, I believe this translates to how we connect to others. And as silly as it sounds, I want everyone to stop and think about this. If you struggle to connect to yourself, if you struggle to ask yourself deep, reflective questions, mark my word on this one, y'all are going to struggle to connect to key decision makers and influencers on all that. Hands down, you will. And that's why I just believe if you can take a step back and do the inner work, and that's the first half of selling from the heart. Right. First half of selling from the heart takes you on a journey to discover what's in your heart. But it's hard to sell from the heart if you struggle to connect to your heart. You're never going to be able to connect on a human level with somebody. There's always going to be that barrier and boundary there. But here's what's interesting, that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that applies to our personal lives, doesn't it? 100%. Yeah. So here's my challenge to everybody. If Maslow's hierarchy of needs applies to our personal lives, then I'll submit to everybody here, it should apply to your professional lives and how you build relationships with your clients and your future clients.
Exactly.
Because I promise you this is what's happening when you engage in a conversation straight up with somebody who hasn't done business with you before. Let's just call this a net new meeting, a first in meeting. You're being introduced to somebody and you're starting conversations off. I can guarantee you this is rapid fire going through their head. Is this person trustworthy? Can I trust them? Can I open up to them? Are they going to make me feel safe and they're going to make me feel comfortable?
Right.
They may not be coming out and saying it, fellas, but I promise you this, it's racing in the back of their heads.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go back to something you said earlier here is that is a salesperson willing to do the work on themselves, that personal development side, that deep introspectual work, your belief systems, your attitudes, all those things should be studied. And the better we become at those, the better we become in sales. I took a Tony Robbins course. A lot of people have contrary beliefs about Tony Robbins, but he said this: salespeople that do traditional sales training, the how-tos, that always be closing techniques and those type of things we've been traditionally taught in sales training and development. what they found out, yeah, there was a spike in productivity, but productivity fell back to baseline within 90 days. Those that couple personal development, the thing we're talking about, understanding human needs and ourselves, and couple that with traditional, they get a higher percentage of increased productivity, but it doesn't drop down back down to a baseline. So he was just basically saying, if you really want to become more successful in sales, become a student of personal development. What's your thought on that?
No, amen on this. And it's something you have to be intentional with. And it's just, the word practice, I just got to throw this out because I think it's going to dovetail really nicely into what you just said. What you were just mentioning, personal development, this requires practice. It requires commitment, it requires discipline, requires accountability. And it's not something like, I'll go back to authenticity for a moment. And authenticity in my world is just simple. It's congruent. Does the walk match the talk? Your beliefs on the inside, does it match the outside? Just little things like that. But authenticity requires practice. You don't just wake up, flip the light switch on, and you're the most genuine, authentic person that you've ever come across. Doesn't work that way.
Right.
It requires massive commitment to personal development and growth. And just to give you a visual, right? You got to be willing to open the cupboard door, right? Like if you want to grab a cup out of the kitchen or a plate out of the kitchen, you open up the cupboard door. You got to be willing to do that with yourself. You got to be willing to open up the cupboard door, take a peek, and then be willing to do the work. Not just open it and then close it and go, I don't want to go there. But personal development is probably the best gift you can give yourself. It's the gift that keeps on giving. But there's no way, let's just face it, there is no way on the face of this earth you can create long-term sales sustainability without doing any kind of personal development. I'll give you a case in point. I love watching golf. So this past weekend, I was watching the FedEx Cup, right? The finals from where Mr. Gasser lives, but it wasn't in his backyard, but it was somewhere in the Atlanta area.
East Lake
And
Country Club. It's East Lake Country Club is what you were talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
But here's what was interesting. It was towards the end of the FedEx Cup. And it came down, right? We all know Victor Hovland won if you followed golf and if you watched it. But what was really interesting about it is one of the golf announcers said that he turned his game around the last half of this year when he finally got inside of his head and he hired a couple coaches that were different than the coaches that he had before around course management, short game, putting, and things like that. Why am I bringing this up? The personal development part of this was mindset. He had to readjust his mindset. And then he had to invest in himself around areas that he felt if he did this, he would improve his game. Same applies to sales. We can't do this alone. There's not one professional athlete on the face of the earth that doesn't have some type of coaches, multiple coaches. But yet in sales, we view sometimes as having a coach as a personal sign of weakness, right? I can fight through this. I don't need one, which I'm here to tell you that's why in Selling from the Heart, I write about it. There's a massive difference between a sales rep and a sales professional. I believe a sales professional is willing to invest in themselves and they hold the mirror up in front of them. Sales rep's going to hold the mirror up in front of them and give you all kinds of excuses why they can't invest in themselves.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Mark, I think you should take this recording and send it to some of those that says I'm not interested.
That's okay.
This interview. So, but
no, you know what? And it's not for everybody. I totally understand. And I think all of us on this call and who are watching are going to agree, right?
Can I insert something here? Larry, Randy Chafee said, I'm always amazed how so many sales folks don't get the idea of being more grateful and thankful. How do you think so many got to this place? You know, when you were talking about the introduction of your conversation. And I've heard all sorts of things that are out there. You shouldn't thank people. You shouldn't, that's
Oh,
a sign of weakness, or you should never apologize. That's a sign of weakness. And I think it goes back to what you always stress is being authentic. And if that's you, and that's okay. And people will see that, and they'll like, hey, I really want to talk to Larry because this guy, like you say, gives a rip. He cares. He's not just
yeah,
asking me about my business. He's asking about me. And, you know,
here's what's interesting is I always like starting off conversations. If I'm engaged in a virtual conversation,
Sure.
if I'm doing an interactive workshop, and sometimes I love flipping in keynotes into interactive keynotes. It's just me. It's who I am. But I'll always start off, by a show of hands, right? How many of you out there believe relationships matter and you're in the people business? And then everyone raises their hand, right? I'm in the people business. Yeah, I agree with you. I'm in the people business. I'm in the relational business and so forth. And I said, well, great. So am I. But here's what I want us to think about next. What are you doing about it? You got it. If you're in the people business and relational business, part of this is building relationships, and it's the words you use, it's the messaging you use, it's how well you connect to somebody, it's how well you relate to someone. If y'all agree that this is just about being human to human, then being human to human is giving somebody thanks and being grateful. It really is, because it'll come back tenfold, but you got to be sincere with it. You can't just say it to say it. And I think that's where some people go if you pay attention to social, and they said, well, don't use thank yous and be grateful and all that, because I just don't think they mean it. I think they just rolls off the top of their head. But there's something powerful when you can look somebody dead in the eye, and with conviction and with clarity and with tonality say, Tom, I've been looking forward to this conversation. I've been looking forward to it for the last few days. I'm super grateful for our time together. I just wanted to let you know that before we get started, I sincerely appreciate you and our time together. And then you just go into this. Now, some people are probably going to go, Larry, I can't buy into that. Well, that's fine. This is developing people skills and relational skills. This is how you connect to somebody. I can guarantee you this. You're going to do it with your friends.
Right.
But somehow, like what you said, Tom, it's a sign of weakness. Somehow people just think you're weak if you do some of this. You can't say that and so forth. You want to stand out. You want to be viewed as being different. You want to be viewed as being somebody who's genuine. I tell you, I'm a big Andy Stanley fan. I follow Andy Stanley, right? He's in the Atlanta area, as a leadership, and, he leads a church. I'm a big Craig Rochelle fan. I'm a big Mark Batterson fan, highly spiritual guys. But if you ever watch how they deliver their leadership message, it's no different. You ever want to get somebody to pay attention to you and lean in, just be grateful for them.
Yep. That's a great point.
Making people know that you care about them first before your objective. We all have an agenda. We all have something we want to get out of this conversation. I mean, that's the ultimate end result that we want. But how do you take when a conversation is going sideways or going down a rabbit hole that is not going to be positive? You can sense that, that. How do you put the brakes on that, or how do you slow that down and get them to maybe take notice without shutting you down or saying no completely? How do you move to that?
Walk me through this. Just peel this back just a little bit for me, so I just get clarity on it. And then I can give you.
Where you're in a conversation and you're dealing with that, and you're starting to move into questions that are more related to the need of the business or the product or service that you want to present them, and it suddenly starts going negative. No, I'm not interested, or we've done that before. Those type of things it's going sideways. It's not opening up. before you have some dialogue to really find out how do you stop that? Or how do you bring
Well,
them
see,
back to?
I get where you're going, and it goes back to what I shared in the very beginning. It's how people set up these conversations. And
Okay.
it goes back to canned questions, get you canned responses. Canned responses go sideways 100% of the time. But if you can start your conversations off with insight-based questions, they will change the course of the conversation. And it just goes back to, I'll roll another one out. Let's just say, for instance, can we just play make-believe?
Yeah.
Sure.
So let's just say I'm having a conversation with a chief sales officer or the head of sales or the president of a company or a business owner that oversees a sales team. And in the beginning of that conversation, right, we set it up based on I had some ideas, I had some insights, and so forth. Well, I'm going to bring those ideas and insights to the forefront immediately. And it could be as simple as Mark, right? Mark, Tom, insert name, doesn't matter. Hey, I'm super grateful for our time together this morning. I look forward to getting into a great conversation over the next 15 to 20 minutes. And before we start off our time together, I'd just like to share with you, last week in a conversation with a chief sales officer, we got into an in-depth conversation around these three things. And these were the three things that we're concerned with that chief sales officer. It was, how do my salespeople grow new business? How do my salespeople grab more first-in meetings? How do my salespeople build better relationships with our clients? Mark, I'm just curious, out of those three, which one here rises to the surface almost immediately when you hear that? And then you just stop. Mark can say something like, I'm always concerned, right? We got to grow new business. Well, what aspects of growing new business are you concerned with? Where do you think you might be struggling with? Would you mind walking me through that? Tom, do you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
Is if you bring immediately to the conversation that you're speaking with people just like them, you've been engaged in conversations with people just like them, you've been working with your clients in these three areas over the last 90 days, here's what people like you have been thinking about, especially ones we've been having conversations with. Now you're bringing something different to the conversation. And watch what starts to happen. But I think if we don't do that and you go in with canned scripted questions, the ones that everyone have been trained to ask, you're going to get, I'm not interested, we're okay with that. And these things tend to go sideways. Bring a relevant idea and bring some relevant insight. Show that you're an educated sales professional who's having conversations with people just like them, who's reading things just like them, who's listening to things just like them. You got your finger on the pulse of how to grow their business in areas they may not have thought of before. You immediately bring that to the surface right away. I promise you this, conversations turn just like that.
Yeah, I can see that.
It takes practice.
It takes some pre-work as well. When you're calling on somebody, do some homework on the individual if you can. There's lots of resources to find information about maybe the CEO or sales manager or whatever. The industry they're in. Usually most people are in a sales, they're familiar with their industry, to whether in the roofing sales or car sales, where they have some basic understanding of that industry, but understand their company in the marketplace if you can do that. Is that a good, do the homework?
Right. Absolutely. Here's another one. Would you be open to some ideas that I've been learning about industries just like yours? Would you be open to that? Would you be open to learning what I've uncovered over the last 90 days in working with small business owners, in working with presidents of companies, it's been interesting, the conversations that we've been involved in and the insights we've been bringing. Would you be open to that? Mark my word on this one. You're going to get somebody to lean up. You're going to get somebody to grab a sheet of paper, and you're going to get somebody to grab a pen, and they will be engaged because they're going to go, holy cow, what just happened?
Yeah. Those
But
that are
then, see
listening
this,
to
but this gets back, guys, goes back to what you had mentioned, questioning and asking good questions. This takes practice, and it's how you set this up. We just call it selling from the heart. We call these insight questions. It's how you set these up. Hey, I'm just curious, right? I was reading in last week's Wall Street Journal. Hey, I'm just curious, last week I was listening to a podcast in the plumbing wholesale distribution channel. I was fascinated with this conversation, especially around ... Just curious what your thoughts are on that. What do you see happening in your channel? Powerful stuff and how you set this all up. That goes back to instantaneously. Now it's trust, credibility. You're making somebody feel comfortable. You're putting them at ease. Hey, I'm dealing with a business professional here. I'm just not dealing with a sales rep.
Yeah. And acknowledging their point of view, their perspective is at the same time. You've got to acknowledge them, because our job is to hear them and then bring to attention to them something that they may not be aware of. So it's listening. I think it's the most important thing. And then acknowledging what they say to you is part of that. Not just asking questions, but acknowledging, even though it might be taking it sideways, it could be negative. Acknowledge their concern or their whatever.
Yeah, because let's just think about it. You're asking somebody for their precious time. You're asking a business owner, a key decision maker, a key influencer for their precious time. You didn't ask them to stop by, check in, follow up, and shuck and jive with them for 15 minutes. You ask them for their precious time. And in exchange for their precious time, you're going to bring some ideas and some insights to the table to get them to think a little bit different about their business that they haven't thought of before you entered that conversation. All I know is this: when I coach and train salespeople, I do this all the time, is I want them to think about this. Did I leave that person in a better place after my conversation than before my conversation?
That's a principle that myself studying Bob Proctor, being trained by Bob Proctor in thinking into results. That's one of the principles always talked about is that engagement. Are you leaving them in a better place? No matter whether in any relationship, if you can learn to do that, you're going to be forethought in their thinking, or if you have to do the follow-up call, they're going to remember that and be more receptive to the next touch. Would you agree?
Totally agree.
They're looking forward to that conversation. This wasn't threatening. There wasn't hard selling me. Wasn't, they're really concerned about me. So they're more anxious to talk with you the next go around if you have a multiple step process.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So your book, I understand you made a comment earlier, you got a second book coming out, and I know that you may want to talk about that, but how do people get a hold of you for your services? If you want to put something in the chat, your website or an email.
Oh, yeah, sure. So just by the way, I do have a second book coming out. Hasn't been announced, but now it's announced. It's all good. No, it's all, dude, don't worry about it. It's going to come out. My gut is going to tell me it's going to be probably sometime mid next year in 2024. Book's already written. It's just with Selling from the Heart being picked up by a publisher and being re-released, I put the brakes on the second book, but there is going to be a second book. It's going to follow Selling from the Heart. It's going to have a little Selling from the Heart twist to it. But those who read Selling from the Heart are going to enjoy reading the second book. But if you want some more of Selling from the Heart, you want to find out where we're up to, just go to sellingfromtheheart.net, sellingfromtheheart.net. If you want a free signed copy of the book, you can go to sellingfromtheheart.net/book, and I'd be more than happy to send you a signed copy of the book. And then you can find the podcast on any podcast platforms you all listen to, as well as you can look at these Daryl's face and my face on YouTube. We broadcast it out every week.
Okay.
And then if they want the book, it's /book, right?
Yep.
Cool. And
Good
there's
job, Mark. Yeah. I've been in sales a long time. I wish I would have had your tutelage and mentorship earlier on. It would have made a big difference in where I am today. And so anybody that's out there in sales, I highly encourage you to get this book. Highly
No,
encourage
you know what, guys, I appreciate it. It's just, what's interesting as we wrap up is I look back on my almost 30 years in the office technology space, and I tell myself all the time, I go, this is exactly how I carried myself from the late 80s until 2015, selling copiers in a highly commoditized channel and selling in Los Angeles. And this is why I just believe in my heart 100% that if leaders out there, business owners, can wrap their heads around relational skills, people skills, continue to do all the fine things y'all are doing, double down on developing your people skills and your relationship building skills. And I promise you this, you will see monumental growth in your revenue. Monumental growth in your revenue. It's alignment of mindset, heart set, and skill set.
Yeah.
And I'd just like to add, if you go on Larry's website, there are some tools out there that you can have access to. And one of the things he just talked about was how to drive better conversations. It's kind of cool with executive decision makers. I'm not going to tell you about it. You got to go in and do your own homework and find this stuff on his website, or, even the journal, and asking yourself questions about you and working on you and developing you. The one thing I didn't ask you, Larry, and I don't know if anybody ever has, what were you like before this all took place? You transformed into this person you are now. I know it took work. Were you one of those kill or be killed type sales guys, or were you a combination of so, or, how authentic were you? I mean, I shouldn't say that, but I mean, to me, you're always authentic, but what was different back then before you got into this movement?
Yeah, really not much and I say that with all sincerity is I silently went about doing my job. And it was interesting. I'm not a braggadocious type person, never have been, never will be. I just let my actions speak louder than words. And I was just always like that in sales. And I had various roles throughout my sales career. I mean, I started off, early on. I didn't have the roles that I had later on in life when I became business partners, and I ran sales departments, and I ran major accounts, and I did enterprise sales and all that. But what I always did really, 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 really well is I outcared everybody. And I was always working on my people skills and my relational building skills. And I saw, right? And I saw what salespeople were doing and not doing. And more importantly, I just started asking my clients, what do they want from salespeople? What's working? What's not working? How they'd like to be taken care of? Simple stuff. It's not rocket science stuff. And I just made it my own. I was just willing to double down on the things that most salespeople weren't willing to double down on. And I played the long game with this. Is I was never, ever, ever the smartest salesperson out there. Never. There was people way smarter than me. Still to this day, there's people way smarter than me. But I will tell you this, there wasn't anyone who's going to outcare me. I just simply gave a rip about the people that I engaged with.
Right.
And it's how I was raised. I was raised in a highly relational type environment where relationships matter. And I just paid attention to it. And if people were going to invest money with me, if corporations were going to turn their hard-earned corporate dollars over to me, I was going to make sure that it was well worth the money spent and that they were going to come back for more and more and more and more. And the only way they would do that is I had to invest in them, their company, their people, and their relationships.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
No, it's my pleasure.
Right.
I just put that up there. Key point, outcare. I think that's important. Differentiation yourself from somebody else. You can demonstrate that you.
I like that. I'm going to outcare you,
Yeah. Picked up on that immediately. So.
we're getting a lot of love. There are people watching this on the Facebook channel here. It's
Oh,
just,
thanks.
yeah, they're sending out hearts, and so it's just kind of,
It's I still go back to this whole, I'm not the smartest whip out there, and still I'm just not. I'm just a guy who's doubled down on the things that nobody's doubled down on, and I just delivered in a way that people can relate to and
right.
give them something to think about. And I do know this because I see it in the clients that we bring to selling, that we're working with here at Selling from the Heart, is the more comfortable I make somebody feel about me, the more comfortable they become. And I know this, it's just second nature. I know that the more comfortable somebody becomes with me in our conversation, the more they start opening up. And when they start opening up, they start sharing things with me they're not sharing with other people. And this is just two words that are near and dear to me is connect and relate. I just want people watching. It's just to pay attention to this, is how fast can I connect to somebody and how fast can I relate to somebody? And if you can do those two things, if you can lean in, pay attention to your tonality, how you deliver your message, how you look somebody in the eye, how you greet them, how you open up that conversation, how you start that conversation will determine what happens next. But this requires practice. You got to practice. You got to prepare for this. You got to be intentional with this. You got to be deliberate with it. You got to be confident with it. You got to believe in yourself. And if you struggle with all these, that's okay. It just means you got to practice it.
Right.
But these are the things that throughout my travels, I see that are sorely lacking, is all these things that I speak about. That's why I firmly believe soft skills will yield you hard dollars. This is the stuff that will turn clients into raving fans. These are the things that'll keep people coming back for more and more and more and telling other people. Man, I can't believe that conversation I just had with Mark. Hey, I can't believe that conversation I just had with Tom. Holy smokes. That was a freaking conversation like none other. But you got to be intentional with it.
Yeah, that's true. Everybody's flipping up. Yeah. Contact and relate. Well, Larry, I don't know what else to say to you, man, because that was a very profound statement that you hit us with. And I thanked everybody for being here this evening and giving of their time. And we hope they found some value, what you shared with us this evening. I know I did. You always get me to think, so the little voice is clicking inside, and, how can I get better? And, continue to work on me. And that's something that I think you talk it, but you walk it as well. It's pretty obvious,
No, I appreciate it. Thanks. I could talk about this. You just wind me up and I'll just keep going. But
yeah, we won't talk about the Braves and the Dodgers. We'll let that.
It's all good. I smell they're colliding towards the end of the year. It's going to
Yeah,
be.
Hey, Milwaukee's coming on, baby. Milwaukee's coming on.
Oh, okay. It's all good. Now you're going to keep me on the net. See, now you're going to keep me on for a while now, because I could once you get baseball going. But
no, we're all from three areas of contenders for this year's pennant. So
no, it's all good. That's
the
why they
Braves,
call it
the
Fall
Dodgers,
Classic.
and Milwaukee. We're all out there. So, Mark, in closing, anything else?
I just think that you really do need to get the book, not just read it, kind of go through it. What I did, I've got it tabbed and highlighted, and download some of Larry's tools, and just kind of pick some time of the day and do some soul searching and ask yourself those questions, what he talked about this evening, and just implement, take action and do it. And even like I kiddingly say this, Larry, it's not personal. If I'm going to steal a page out of Bruce Arian, he used to be a football coach for the Cardinals.
Sure.
He said, I like you guys, I love you guys, but right now, Larry, your football sucks. So let's work on that, And I think that when you say about being honest with yourself and looking in the mirror, that's what it's about. Here's where I'm at. This is what I need to do. I'm not a bad person. I'm
No.
not going to go to hell. I just need to work on me and develop, and it's all going to work out. And
No, absolutely. And I'll just leave you all with this is I know this in my heart of hearts. As a human, we can all become better, personally and professionally. And I think everybody who's watching or listening can agree. Well, then it's up to you, right? You got to take action on it, right? Maybe go back and listen to this, right? Pick the nuggets out, find something, find the little gems in here in our conversation. Just go, what would it be like if I just implemented one of these? And what happens if it's even better? What happens if I become even better than I am today? That's all I'd leave anyone with is, right? It's you don't have to do exactly what I say because we're all unique, different human beings.
right.
But I do know this, we all want to become better. We all can improve personally and professionally. It's just, what are we going to do about it? Nothing happens unless you're willing to put it into action. Otherwise, you're just going to stay exactly who you are. My 2 cents. I'm sticking to it. My 2 cents, guys.
I'll just build on that. My mentor, Bob Proctor, says you got to make a decision.
Yep.
You got to make that decision.
Yep.
for
Totally
improvement.
agree.
So, yeah. So, well, Larry, as always, it's a pleasure to have you on. I can see why you've had success in your career, and you want to take your wisdom, your gift, and your talents to the world to help improve this profession of sales. I really appreciate that because anybody that's been in sales, it's not an easy road. But
Nope.
If we just become human beings again, not salespeople, we'll have a lot more success.
Amen on that one.
Yeah. So thank you much for being here.
We
Oh, my
appreciate it.
pleasure. We'll see you guys next time.
All right.
And I apologize for letting the cat out of the bag.
You know what? Don't
Can't
worry
wait
about
to
it.
have you back on
It's all
again
good.
and feature-
It's all good.
feature that as
It's
well,
all
so.
good, Tom. Don't worry about it. It's all good.
Okay, bud. So anything else, Mark? We'll roll it out.
Well, the other thing is, Larry, and I've got to reach out to your counterpart and get Daryl on here. I'd like to pick his brain since he's
Oh
worked
yeah,
with you.
Darrow will be good.
Yeah. I'm kidding when I say this. He has to put up with you. No.
Stop. It's all good.
No.
Yeah, Darrow will be a good guy for you guys to have a conversation
Right.
with.
Absolutely.
Well, Mark, again, thank you for making the arrangements to get Larry back on. It's like I said,
I didn't do any.
a pleasure and a joy
Yeah.
to hear him speak and talk about things that are dear to my heart in sales. And thanks, Larry, again.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'll catch up with you guys next time.
All right.
Okay. Thanks.
So, Mark, I'll just go ahead and play out our tribute to our sponsor.
Absolutely.
Okay, here we go. Be connected, be seen, be heard, be found. Reach out to Mark or myself. We'll be glad to introduce you to this amazing 5-in-1 platform that we've used tonight in our interview with Larry, but it offers a whole lot more resources than just what we're doing here tonight. So we just wanted to give credit to our corporate sponsor, Be Connected. So with that all said, everybody have a great evening. God bless everybody. Be safe, and prosperity to all.